That's what it. All right, we are on to our next topic, which is Dad's missionary service. And true to the form for his last two, I think Dad has a late breaking. He has an overall title for all the series of topics that we're hitting, which I guess is the title for his life, maybe. And then he's got a title for his mission. So let's start there, Dad. What you want to share? What your titles are?
The overall title is Often Wrong, Never in Doubt. Somebody, I can't remember who it was, some guy at a sports talk show thing, and that was his byline. I like that. So
nice.
Often Wrong, Never in Doubt. And my title for the mission part is the line from the Frank Sinatra song My Way, which was regrets. I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention.
Nice. And why did you choose that one for the title of your mission?
So probably the two ways to best describe the mission is to describe it in two things. One is, what are things that I regret looking back in hindsight? And then the other is, a question people ask me is, why am I so reluctant to go back and visit? So I kind of cover those. That kind of answers some of the questions that you'd outlined, which are good. So
yeah. Okay. Do you want to start there? Do you want to take it chronologically, or do you want to take one of those first?
Why don't I take those, because those help to answer some of the other questions and put them in context.
Okay.
So maybe why am I so reluctant to visit, and why might I never do it? Because that, anyway, I think you were part of it, but you remember how we went to Epcot a few times?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and there's a Norway exhibit there. And when we went, and it's, there's no reason to spend much time there. It doesn't have a ride or anything. If it was some other country, I'd have just popped in and popped out. So we went. Nobody wanted to stay long. And I really liked it. And we went, and then for a couple of years, I told Conley, when we go back to Epcot, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go by myself and spend as long as I want. Great. And when we went, in fact, I don't think there's any kids. It was just her and I, and Grandma Conley was there. And I said, hey, I'm just going to go by myself. Okay. And Conley says, how about if we come with you and we don't talk to you? And I said, sure, we can do that. And I went, and I really liked it. And it was like, what I liked was, it was just the whole experience, because the whole mission thing was just so special to me in a way I can't describe. It was just awesome to be there and just spend a long time and just look at the pictures and stuff, and just, yeah. And so that even gets to why, we're doing a bunch of trips. We've scheduled Japan next year. Conley's always the same. Let's do Norway. We've been to Europe. And I go, I'm not sure I want to go. Why don't you want to go? So part of it is, it's kind of interesting. It's the line, you can't go home again.
Yeah.
As much as which I enjoy, like everybody else, it's like 895 and everything. And we went to 895 and walked through, and that was cool, but it's like, that was then and this is now, and it'll never be the same. So yeah, I'll go when everybody else goes, but I don't have a burning desire to do that anymore, as special as that was. So part of it is like, I don't want to go because the memory is so special and so great. I don't want the reality to butt heads with it. That's kind of a dumb thing. And part of the ironic thing is, if Conley dies before me, I will probably go by myself. So, yeah. But the other one is,
why do you say that? Why is that the case?
Because one of the other reasons I wouldn't want to go is because I would be with other people, and I would be, in my mind, too much the center of attention. And that's not like how I like to do trips.
Okay.
And really probably the biggest one is the language.
Yeah.
Because I learned the language so well. I was even a translator, and now it's completely gone. And I'd feel bad about that, but I mean, with people, I go, what does this mean? What does that mean? I have to keep reminding myself over and over and over again. You've forgotten all of it.
Yeah.
Mandy showed me a letter the other day that she had in some of my stuff. I didn't realize she had my missionary stuff, and it was in Norwegian. I was reading it. It's like, oh, I can remember more than I thought. So I think if I did go with Conley, which maybe we'll do in 2026, I think I'll try to immerse myself in Duolingo and stuff and just
Mm.
get enough of it. So anyway, that's really the reasons I've been reluctant to go.
So it sounds like, if I'm summarizing, it sounds like a combination of uh, wanting to preserve the special time as it was, and knowing that going back, things will have changed. It won't feel totally the same way. The second one is not not wanting the attention placed on you of you experiencing that kind of and indulging in that, which I get. And then the third one, maybe a smaller one, is just the frustration of having known the language so well and then having that be gone.
Yeah. And part of the attention thing is, it's not like I'm some selfless person, but it just reminds, that's not the way I think of vacations. I remember once
Right.
with a group, we would go to Santa Cruz and take friends, and Emily with her friends. And Emily said to me, she goes, you don't really care about the boardwalk one way or the other, do you? And I go, nope. And I thought it was just interesting that it dawned on her. So,
Yeah.
but I'm obsessed to go with the boardwalk because I know how much people like it. And it's like Mark. He is so excited about Yosemite this summer because he's taking people there for the first time. That's
Right.
what's exciting. It's like, yeah. Anyway.
And for those, so when you talk about your experience at Epcot, um, and and kind of how special that was. I mean, for a lot of people, I guess that would, you've served a mission or had an experience like that, that would make sense. But what is it about it? Was seeing the pictures and
It was just
what?
seeing the pictures, remember the country, remembering the just the people and how awesome they were, and just all the experiences just brought all that back. And that's really one of the things with going is like really the most powerful memories you can have. They're in your head. It's more
Right.
powerful than actually seeing or feeling. But
Yeah.
even it's like it's difficult to describe. It was just this special, awesome feeling. Just felt like a nice warm blanket going on.
Yeah.
So
It felt like a nice warm blanket remembering that, or that's how you would describe your experience of being there as a missionary.
no, remembering it. Yeah,
Got it.
yeah. And really, uh, if Conley would have asked me before, which she didn't, how was that? I said, that was awesome. And she just said, well, how was it awesome? I'd feel like dumb, like trying to describe it because it wouldn't sound right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She's a very perceptive
Interesting.
person. She didn't ask a lot of questions. She just
Hmm.
let me enjoy it. So, and just
Yeah.
thought I was weird, and she's right.
All right. Well, I want to come back to that and unpack that more about the
Big.
warm blanket feeling and what what brings that. But you've talked about in previous conversations we've had about how there wasn't necessarily a moment where you decided you were going to go on a mission, but maybe talk a little bit more about that, about how you came to that conclusion you were going to serve, and maybe the time leading up to when you
Okay.
decided to serve, what went into that.
So, parenthetical note, one of the things that's hardest about getting older is I keep repeating myself. So I can't remember. Did I talk before about when my dad's friend asked why I went on a mission? And when did I decide?
I can't remember if you did or not, so let's pretend
Okay,
like you
so
didn't.
it's good. I can repeat it. So my dad, uh, he introduced me to a friend who was not a member. He was really proud that I had my mission call. And the guy was really interested. He says, when did you decide? And it was like two things came to me when he said that. I couldn't answer the question because it was like, I have no idea when I decided. I was just always going to go. But the corresponding thought that came with it is like, no, I'm going because I want to, and this is absolutely the right thing to do. So I was just always going to go. I just can't ever remember it ever even being a question, which is totally at odds with my Sam Unwise being oblivious. And maybe
Right.
part of oblivious was sound like what I wanted to do, and I didn't have enough self awareness to analyze it.
Yeah.
Do I
And
really?
could you
Do
have
I really want to? Yeah, that's what
could you
was.
have articulate?
That was what was interesting about talking to that guy, because I had both thoughts simultaneously. I don't know when, but yeah, I really want to go because I
Yeah.
never really thought that through. Like, should I? Shouldn't I? What are the pros and cons or whatever? No, I just want to go, and I'm going to go.
And could you have articulated then why you wanted to go?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. I mean, I would have said the standard things everybody says now. I want to serve, and I've been called, and that's what I would have said, and it was true. But everybody who goes on a mission kind of knows that, even if you sometimes you go for maybe not the best reason because everybody else does, and you want to please your girlfriend or whatever. But as you get there, those reasons kind of sort out. And so for me, it's not like the reasons change. It's just like, oh, that's why I'm here. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a
And
really inadequate answer, but
no.
any first
Yeah.
and really where I was when I went, I was right on the cusp of moving from Sam Unwise to normal. So,
Okay.
and a lot of the normal and processing things in my head, I was already there. And since there was no MTC, it was just like super quick. Just
Hmm.
boom, and you're there. Including the temple. We weren't allowed not we weren't allowed to go to the temple before. The mission home was 6 days, in
Wow.
Salt Lake. A lot of intense training, no language. And would wake up one morning at 4:30 and go do 2 temple sessions and then never go again for 2.5 years. It was just all,
Wow.
which I thought was awesome because I had nothing to compare it to. And it totally fit my flip the switch thing. It's just like, okay, you've been this and now you're doing this. So the fact that it was so intense was just like, this is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the reflecting on, oh, what am I here? What am I doing? It was too intense. That was more my first month in the mission.
Okay. And how would you describe how you felt when you found out that you were going to go to Norway? That was a
So
surprise.
I think I mentioned it before. I hadn't really had enough presence of mind to think, where might I go and where do I want to go? So, when you turn in your mission papers, you're either going to go 30 months, 26 months, or 24 months, depending upon the call. And I had this vague feeling as like, that'd be cool to go speak a foreign language, but beyond that would have required more thought than I was capable of. Grew up in Sacramento. I loved the summer. I loved it when the temperature got to be 115. I did not like cold. And my mother, I think I mentioned this before, is a very tender, emotional person. This is her first son going on a mission. It's a special moment. We opened the papers, Norway, and she laughed. She thought that was so funny. They were sending me to Norway. And not only
Because
that,
of the cold.
it's 2.5 years and it's 3 winters. But my
Yeah.
thought about it was like, wow, it's a country I know nothing about. This is really exciting. So I
Yeah.
didn't have any trepidation or wish it was somewhere else. It's like, wow, this is great. It's crazy.
And how would you describe culturally then? Was it the norm that you would go on a mission when you were that age, or was it more optional? Did you feel that did that play into some of your pressure to go, or do you feel like
So
that was
culturally,
just some?
culturally, a lot of guys went. There was no teaching from the prophet that everybody supposed to go. Every man was supposed to go. But when people went, they went when they were 19, the guys. And
Okay.
I was a month short of 20 because I wanted to do a second year of school. And part of my thinking was, school started September 1st, and my birthday is October 20th. And I didn't want to waste a month and a half waiting till I go on mission. That's because I had flipped the switch. So it's like, no, I'm going to go 2 years, work the summer, and then I'm going boom right after the summer. So.
Okay. And okay, so you were excited to go to Norway, and you said it was 6 days total of training before you got to the country?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way it was then. The language training mission, which was called then, only existed for 4 languages. So that's what everybody did, except for those 4 languages, they'd go the 6 days, then they go down to Provo, which is called the LTM.
Okay, so
the 6 day thing was like, that was standard. I wasn't like, whoa, I had some special weird thing. That's just the way it was.
but so that means when you arrived in Norway, you literally didn't speak a word of the language.
I knew one word.
What's that?
No, I don't know why I knew that. Yes, I knew that word. Yeah. But again, and even in hindsight, even when I got into it, Norwegian by comparison is an easy language. It's an easy language, so it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to Japan. It's like, oh my gosh, what is this? And everybody did it. And I had been to school for 2 years, and I knew I was above average smart. So I was not intimidated by learning a not difficult language at all, which served me really well because,
Yeah.
and I'd taken German in high school and French in college, so I'd been exposed to a foreign language. And again, it's not a difficult language.
Yeah.
So that part didn't scare me at all.
So, and I want to come back to the language in a second, but talk more about, do you remember what your first impressions were when you arrived in the country? Like what struck you, what you remember seeing, what you remember experiencing in your first couple days or weeks?
Yeah. I mean, there was a problem with the flights. I can't remember, it was weather or whatever. And rather than flying directly to Oslo, we flew to Copenhagen and spent the night. And then when we got there, there were 9 of us that came to the mission at once. And so everybody I spent like 2 hours in the mission home because, we had to go places and we were a day late. And I ended up going to an area called Yuvik, which was a new area that didn't have missionaries. I was a couple hours in the mission home. The AP and his companion drove me to the train station, wrote the name of the town on a piece of paper, and stuck me on a train.
Wow.
To get there, and I just kept showing it to the conductor to figure out where to go. But Norway is a very safe country, very civilized. Their life expectancy is longer than ours. So, it just felt like a fun adventure. It didn't feel dangerous at all. There's nothing then or now third world about Norway at all. So it's just, which was great for me. If the flight would have been on time and I'd have spent the night in the mission home and we'd have got pep talks and whatever, I've been like, okay, let's get into this. And that's what it was. I was just thrown right into it.
Yeah.
Right into it. So it was just like, and it's obvious from just stepping outside as the country is just jaw-dropping beautiful. The travel posters and internet wallpapers and stuff that are done of Norway. That's the way the country is. They just didn't find some great spots. So
yeah. Was there anything
not like
challenging?
Nevada or something where you got to go find a beautiful spot. You go, oh wow,
Right.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, was there anything challenging about culturally of first arriving there, whether it be language, food, cultural norms,
I know, but
transitioning from living in the US?
food's really
Yeah.
easy. I mean, I ate some odd foods like blood pudding and stuff, but food was really easy. It's not spicy. It's very mild. Culturally, yeah, it's different, but it's not mega different than US. But part of it is, again, I'd flipped the switch and I was so ready. So I was just ready for anything. So everything was just
Yeah.
like, great. Yeah, this is new. This is different. I have no idea what I'm doing, but this is why we come and this is why we do. So, which
And
is not surprising. So much of anything we do is just attitude. So, yeah.
yeah, I'm
My
curious to
attitude
two
was,
questions.
my attitude was, this is going to be a lot of work, but there's going to be nothing scary. Either scary like physically scary or scary like hard to overcome. You know, and since that was my attitude and the nature of the country and the culture fit into it, then it wasn't scary. So,
Yeah. Two related questions with that. What are the biggest cultural differences you'd say between the US and Norway? And then were you clued in enough, keyed in enough to recognize those quickly, or when did you realize those cultural
and I
differences?
recognized them quickly. One is great people. They're very not immoral, but amoral. You know, that was just obvious from the start. So it's like, wow, this is really different. So,
Hmm.
uh, and then culturally, which is interesting because I've always had an interest in it. You know, it's just a very socialist country, and it's like, you know, we had priesthood lessons and talked about the welfare program, which just went completely over their heads. They don't understand it at all. Why would you need a
Hmm.
welfare program? The government takes care of everything. And
Yeah.
Norway was well to do when I was there, but they really discovered oil after I left. You know, and by some metrics of gross national product and average wealth, it's probably the wealthiest country in the world, either that or Finland. And so, I mean, the wealthiest is probably Bahrain or one of those, but you got some high end people who are dragging the average up. So it
Yeah.
was, yeah, you know, I mean, that's the fact that it was very progressive and liberal. That was just interesting to me. That didn't really affect anything. I mean,
Sure.
it did seem to affect people with their initiative because they were just used to the government doing everything. But
Okay. Okay.
maybe that had kind of some effect. But
So let's come back to language. So you said you weren't overwhelmed by that and it was an easier language to learn. But talk about your process of learning the language and how long before you felt like you were comfortable conversing. Talk about how that went.
so uh, the way we learned it was I had a great companion to start with. He wasn't the hardest worker in the world, but he followed the rules. And
Yeah.
we didn't track as much as we did when I was there, but it was awesome because it gave me more time to study. And so he he was American, but Norwegian was spoken in his house.
Huh.
So he was a great guy and he was a very willing teacher. So we taught it that way. We did the thing a lot of missionaries do. You know, we only a lot of times only spoke Norwegian to each other. And then I was just obsessed and I got books and studied it and stuff. So, you know, it was combinations of that. And when we would go shopping or get a haircut, you know, they would just say, "You're on your own." You know,
Hmm.
everyone went to the barber and I go, "Hey, that's the one time, tell him what I want." So,
Right.
you know, and we're like probably a lot of missionaries. You go buy something and then they tell you how much it is and you're too embarrassed that you don't know. So you just hold out money and they take it and give you change. And pretty soon your pants get really heavy because you have all these coins. So it was learning from him and then, you know, learning from books and stuff. And that's the way the mission was. So there was people were used to having greenies and doing that. I had a couple of greenies when I was a senior. You just go through stuff and teach
Yeah.
and
And so how many months or weeks before you felt like you could communicate what you wanted to, where you felt somewhat comfortable?
so we went on think they're called exchanges now. I think they were called splits, but I think the district leader came up when we'd been there a month with his companion. I think it'd been out as long as I would, and we did splits, and the two of us went out tracting after 30 days, and I was very comfortable with that. Talking about the church, they would ask me about something
Right.
from California, and I go, sorry.
Yeah.
So it came really fast, but it came fast to everybody. I was not like some prodigy there, so.
Yeah. How long then till
Part
you
of
get
that,
when you?
when we get to the, and we'll get into more detail, when I talk about my hindsight regrets, one of them was I was my normal self. I was hyper competitive. And I just wanted to learn the language faster than anybody. So I just really, really immersed myself into it. And like I say, it wasn't like Chinese or something where I got to learn new characters, you know, it's just like,
Yeah.
and as many people learn, you just you greater appreciation for English, because it's like, well, there's rules, but there's not that many exceptions, and things are always pronounced the same way. And I've told you about what I would tell the people, to my companions, missionary companions who'd come, was a greeting. I'd tell them, I say, have you ever learned a foreign language? And if they said, yeah, I go, then you will have no trouble with Norwegian. If they hadn't, then I go, okay, it's going to be an issue, because you're going to want everything to translate exactly. And sometimes they get frustrated with the different rules and stuff. And I'll do it again. I've done this many times before, but I'd take a piece of paper and write these two words on it.
Colonel and Colonel. Yeah.
Colonel and Colonel. And I go, how would you like to be learning English? It's
Yeah.
like, you're so fortunate to be learning Norwegian. I think, I've studied that many languages, but to me, English is the hardest language there is, because it's just like all it is exceptions.
Yeah.
It works. The only thing we have in English that redeems it is we don't have gender.
Right. Yeah.
In Norway, there was two, masculine and feminine. So anyway.
So it was a month before you felt like you can converse on gospel topics. How long before you felt like you were fluent conversing in most situations you're in?
Probably 3 months.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
that wasn't odd to go like, whoa, that elder Stoddard, he learned it fast. A lot of people learned it that fast. Some people were slower, but that was not that odd.
But you were motivated and competitive to learn quickly, but you don't feel like that translated into you learning significantly faster than others necessarily?
Probably. The thing that's interesting to me is I have taught out of the old gospel principle books about, where you learn the basic gospel. And there's 2 chapters that are kind of interesting. One is on spiritual gifts, and the other is on talents. And sometimes when I read those, it's like, sometimes they sound like the same thing, but they're different things. And learning Norwegian to me was a good example of it, because a talent was I was smart and I'd learned a couple of foreign languages, so I had a talent to learn it. But the big one is it's a spiritual gift,
Yeah.
And that's why, to me, because I didn't keep it up when I was released, it's like that gift was gone. I didn't need it anymore. And so much of what I learned, which is interesting because I'm a visual learner, not audio, but even that, so much of what I learned, I just learned by talking, And so when I get a new companion, he goes, what does that word mean? I go, I've never really thought of what that word means in English, which is the way, Hank and everybody learns English. They're not asking you what's this word. They just hear talking and they talk and stuff. That's
right. Yeah.
We would see it with people learning the language because, we were The younger you are, the easier it is to learn. A missionary, when he'd come was 26, it was harder than when he was 19. And
Sure.
we would meet American kids who were like 6 and 7 and 8 who'd learned Norwegian, and we were jealous of them because they had an accent that we could never have.
Yeah.
You know, we knew the rules better than them. I knew the Norwegian grammar better than a lot of Norwegians because they didn't study it, but we could never
Yeah.
get their accent. And we sometimes could fool some old people who just thought we were from another part of Norway, but you could never fool a 5-year-old Norwegian kid. You go, you're from America.
Yeah. They were too perceptive.
They could hear it. And
Yeah.
some of the stuff, the letter that really gave it away was the way we pronounce an L, and we could never hear the difference. They would just laugh at us, and it sounded exactly the same because we couldn't hear it because we didn't
Yeah.
grow up with it. But anyway,
Interesting. So that's language development. Let's talk about spiritual development, how you came into the mission field, and talk about what your spiritual development was.
so the spiritual development was, I talked before about the crash course of reading the Book of Mormon, immersing myself and everything else, and I flipped the switch. So the
And that
first
was
time,
within that was within what period of time and at the beginning of your mission? Did you read
just
it?
right from the very start. Yeah. But right from
Okay.
the very first day, preparing for my mission, getting ready to go. Prayers were normal. The very first day I'm there in the mission home or whatever it was called, the 6 days in Salt Lake, all of a sudden it's real. It's on my knees. It's, you know, I'm asking for things. I'm expecting answers and stuff. The switch was flicked. So that was a
Yeah.
big spiritual development as prayer became all of a sudden was real.
So
And
that was with
and if you immerse yourself in a mission and follow the rules, it's you're just it's become spiritual, not for anything you do, just because you completely immerse yourself in what's there.
yeah. So that you stepped into that role, you were immersing yourself in it. Would you say then that your faith in the gospel or in God, your understanding of the gospel just kind of progressively grew over time, or how would you describe what that experience was like then?
It grows very quickly because one of the things where it grows your faith, the faith to me is, again, very competitive, memorizing scriptures in Norwegian and memorizing the lessons. And there's been many iterations of lessons. We had 6, and it's really basic and very logical. And it was like ways that I'm sure had been taught to me as I was growing up, but I was ignoring the class because I was too busy making spent wads and paper airplanes and talking to my buddies about getting a driver's license. But it was just so logical and it just seemed so right. And that with my praying and stuff, that just came very fast. But the big
Yeah.
thing is there's just a spirit that's there. And if you don't push against it and immerse yourself in it, it just sucks you in. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the beauty of a mission. I call it in some ways, this may not sound like a right word, it's an artificial environment because if you'll participate, all extraneous stuff is removed. And you just only do one thing, and that's all you do. You come home,
Yeah.
you're on fire, but all of a sudden you're dating and you're going to school and got to make decisions. You're doing great things. It's like, wow, I was in an artificial cocoon before.
Right.
But to me, if you immerse yourself in an automatic cocoon, it's like a tidal wave of spirituality. The way I put it, which I did, the only way it doesn't happen is if you fight against it. And I did not fight against it.
Mhm.
And it
Yeah.
just swept me up. As
Yeah.
to me, as it'll sweep up anybody.
Yeah. So this
And
sent me. This is
I
a
had the blessing of, I've been homesick one day of my life, and that was 2 years ago, and I was done with that. So I didn't have any of that.
And what this is kind of a maybe an obvious question, but a big question. As your faith grew and that kind of spiritual wave hit you that you were caught up in, what impact did that have on you? How did that change how you operated as a missionary?
It just changed how I operated because it wasn't a different way of thinking, but it was a new way of thinking. Because again, all the distractions were removed. I had a really nice girlfriend before my mission, and I just it's like, God, I'm not gonna have a girlfriend to ride on a mission. And it was a very rude way I did. I just dumped her and just, yeah. So it was just new things to think about. And nothing was strange to me because it's like, oh yeah, I was taught those things, but now I see how they fit, how they make sense, and how it works. And now the plan of salvation, it's nothing in the plan of salvation is like, well, I had no idea of that. It's like, oh, I've heard that. Oh, that's how this fits. So
Yeah. Would you say that experience of your faith growing, you feeling the Spirit more, I guess, being more convicted or of the gospel, what impact did that have on your personality? Could you point to anything there? Did that change your personality or how you interacted with others?
um, yes, it did. Because it was the first time in my life I was really 100% focused on something. And the first time in my life that I wasn't, if not 100% oblivious, but 50 or whatever. I was
Yeah.
just completely self-aware of what I was doing. I just knew exactly, because I was so willing to follow rules, exactly what to do and stuff. And so it very much changed my personality because of that.
Yeah.
I was no longer Sam Unwise.
Yeah.
And again, it's not like I was all of a sudden more mature because the mission does mature you, but it was just like because I flipped the switch and because I didn't fight it and just because I wanted to be swept up in it.
Yeah. How then might be an uncomfortable question for you to ask or answer, but you could answer positively and negatively. How do you think other missionaries would have described you, or how would your mission president, or how did they describe you?
Oh, I know how they describe me. I know how they describe me.
Okay.
I was a machine. I was a machine. I so so my this would be a good way to describe it because it describes the personality way that people saw me. Regrets, I have a few, but too few to mention. Well, what I've done different. One is I'd have been nicer to my companions.
Hmm.
So if they didn't want to work hard, I was not fun to be with
Hmm.
because I didn't care. We were going to work, and that's the way
Yeah.
it was. If they wanted to work, we got along. But again, and I got really along with most, and we were good friends. But I've never been to mission homecomings, and I've never stayed in contact with any of the others because I was not a friendly guy. I was just an
Yeah.
obsessed hard worker. I was called a
Hmm.
machine when the 9 of us got together in the mission home before we went home and we bore a testimony. It came my time to bear my testimony. And it was finally over. And I couldn't even talk. I just cried. And
Hmm.
people there says, we had no idea a machine could cry. And so I would have been nicer to my companions. But if I went back again, I'd only be a little nicer. And I had an interesting thing one time. It was, we had a pecking order of when you become a district leader and whatever. And I was a district leader. It was a transfer. There was another missionary that I knew of. I kind of only met him. He'd been out a month longer than me. And he was fine. He was following the rules. Maybe he wasn't the gung-ho guy in the world, but he wasn't like a party guy like some. he got assigned to be my junior companion. And
Yeah.
it's like, what? I thought it was cool because I finally had somebody who could speak English because I'd have been in trouble with my voice because I talk so much. He went to a doctor and he goes, looked at my, says, do you talk a lot? And I go, you have no idea. So I got with him and he was upset when that happened because it was kind of a slap in the face. And sometimes missionaries would get put with somebody and the mission president says, we need you to help turn this guy around. But he didn't
Yeah.
need turning around. But we got along great and we became good friends. But he said and he knew my reputation because everybody knew it. And
Yeah.
and when he got it, he just says, I am going to break that guy. So that was my reputation.
Hmm.
And
So I want to go back.
we got together and we got along and we just, because you have a lot of time on a non-baptizing mission to get to know your companions because you just learn to visit between every door. So you just,
Hmm.
you've been a long time with your companion when you start to repeat your stories.
Hmm.
But you've been a really long time with him when you repeat his stories and you think yours. So you
Yeah.
really get to know your companion. Probably more than a baptizing mission because you don't spend as much time except maybe companion study talking to each other. But we're
Yeah.
talking 10 hours a day and just visiting from door to door.
Yeah.
I know I was perceived because I sensed it and I didn't care. And he
Right.
told me, and other people told me, his friend told me they were good friends. He told me later, he goes, yeah, you turned out to be an all right guy. So, because his
So,
companion told him that.
well, I want to go back to the moment you said where you're bearing your testimony at the end and you cried because you realized it was finally over.
It wasn't
Explain that
cried like
more.
sad. It was just like it had been pushed for for 2.5 years, and now it's pushed. I never, and again, it's just I'm a not look back kind of a guy. I never, when I got home, I stepped foot on BYU. I to this day I have such pleasant memories of our mission, but I never wanted to go back, and I was never sad that I wasn't there.
Yeah.
It was always push, push, work, work, and it was like the push is over.
Yeah.
It's just this release as opposed to sadness.
Got it.
I wasn't
Okay.
sad. I wasn't sad. I remember hitting my 2-year mark and thinking like, wow, if I was a never mission, I'd be going home. That's way too early. So
Hmm. Would you say it was also a sense of relief of like you pushed and you did it, you pushed like you felt like you needed to and you'd accomplished it, or was it more of like a relief of like I'm done being the machine, I can stop pushing so hard?
no, it was a relief because I'd accomplished it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was no like, oh, I'm glad I don't have to push anymore. It's like,
Sure.
and it's like what I did. And then I went to BYU, which we'll talk about later, you know,
Yeah.
and I had to go to the dean every semester to get special written permission to take the maximum amount of credits, and then I'd take 2 jobs.
Hmm.
And oh, by the way, in the middle of that, why don't I get engaged? So, it's just, so it wasn't
So
like,
where does it, yeah.
it doesn't like I don't have to push anymore. It's like, no, this is who I am. I'm going from this push to that push. So,
Yeah. And where does that, where did that come from? That desire to push or to be a machine? And that when you were explaining that, I don't know if I'd heard you talk about that, your final testimony, but that resonates with me because I think so much somehow of what you served, I know how, in part because of the stories you told, filtered down into how we serve missions. And that yeah, just that feeling of giving and that relief of, okay, I did it, I pushed and I um I gave it, and the time is ending. That is, I remember, I know that feeling well, but
And
Where do you think that came
it
from?
reminds me of, I told everybody, you guys, when you're on mission, there's two pieces of advice. Just work hard as you can and try to be 100% obedient. And I remember, we're talking about you, but I remember seeing it so many times. And I remember Luke at the end of his mission. It wasn't a big health concern, but I remember he had some health issues the last couple of weeks. It's like, what is it? And I remember it dawned on me, oh, I know what it is. He's worn out.
Yeah.
He pushed so hard, he's just completely out of gas. And that was probably part of the crying. Yes, it was tender, and yes, it was special memories, but it's like I gave
You're exhausted.
everything and it's over.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Not over sad, but it's just like,
Oh yeah, no, I get it.
it's like what I've described to Isaiah with sports. It's like I am so hyper competitive, so that I can't play Catan. I can't do that stuff because I can't turn it off. But there's a feeling that's better than winning, and there's a feeling that's worse than losing. And the feeling that's better than winning is, and I've done it in sports. It's not when you win, that's when you finish a game. And I played in, basketball where you go up to different levels until you lose. It's like you play a game or you play a season, I had nothing left to give. I gave everything. To me, that's a better feeling of winning, which is a big deal to somebody who likes to win as much as I do. And the thing that's worse than losing is I didn't give it all.
Yeah.
That was the tears. It's just like I physically could not have worked harder. I could have worked smarter, and I could not have been more obedient because I was obsessed with it.
Right.
So much that I wasn't healthy because I was competitive. I wasn't always the nicest person to be with. I'm not saying I was the ideal missionary. I was not. But that was crying is because it's like, wow. It's just like I gave everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I still have dreams occasionally 20 plus years later that I'm back on my mission and I'm whatever 6 months in and I'm lazy and I don't care about the rules and I'm not really going out to work. So that's deeply embedded in my psyche as a missionary and still more than 2 decades later.
So I don't know, was that an answer to it or?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. So talk more about the any big stories to share from people you taught or interacted with, whether that be members or investigators. What are some highlights there?
Well, there's so few baptisms, a lot of really awesome missionaries. Would go the whole 2.5 years and baptize nobody. So just when you are affiliated with a baptism, and as far as counting on your record, I had 2, which is a lot. That was awesome. And I was affiliated with 2 others. And so one guy, I wrote him letters. I don't know, I think the last letter was 10, 15 years ago. I mean, they weren't a long time, but I don't even know if he's still alive. He'd probably be close to 100, so he probably isn't. But the really special thing is, and it's a tearjerker for me even now. It's like because so few people were baptized, and they said so they wanted to interview people, and the reason they got a testimony is because of the Holy Ghost. But they want to ask the question, what initially attracted you? And so they're asking this guy, and I thought, oh, maybe he'll say, yeah, he was great language. He bore a great testimony. He knew the discussions. He knew the scriptures. He said, I looked in Elder Stoddard's eyes and I knew he wasn't lying. And I was like, oh my goodness. So that was just that relationship and stuff with him is just awesome. And really totally, in terms of an answer, totally unexpected.
Yeah.
I knew he wouldn't have joined. I knew he wouldn't have joined because I had great command of the language, but it's like So he says, why'd you join the church? It's like, I played church basketball and loved interacting with the guys. That isn't why they joined, but that's what attracted to them. So many people were attracted because of boyfriend or a girlfriend. So I did not
Yeah.
expect that answer. You know, the ultimate answer is because I got a testimony of the Holy Ghost, but that answer I had not expected.
Yeah. And what was his family situation? How old was he? How did you meet him?
The last letter, so I met him tracting. The last letter, he had not, uh, his wife had never joined, but had always been supportive and stuff. And I'm
Mm,
pretty sure had kids later. I don't remember whether they joined or not. So
yeah. And I can make my own conclusions about why that was so impactful hearing him say that, but why hearing him say that looking into your eyes, he knew that you essentially were telling the truth, that you weren't lying. Why did that have such an impact on you?
it was just a reminder: is it's not me, it's the Spirit. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? Yeah.
right. Any
In
other
terms of what I
such
did, it didn't make me any less competitive. It was just like, oh,
yeah.
yeah,
Any other memorable companions or investigators or members that stand out?
probably mostly that one. Yeah, I remember. I remember. Uh, yeah, it was my first time to be a senior, and again, so competitive. I drove my I drove my uh, senior companions crazy because I was not the nicest junior companion because it's like, okay, we're gonna do this, this, and this. So it was my first time uh, to be a senior, and we had uh, people that we would call professional investigators. Just having
Yeah,
missionaries over all the time, especially when it's really cold in the winter. It's like, okay, I don't think we're getting anywhere here, but rather than 10 hours tracking, let's spend time here. So there was this lady, family was the Lee family. It was daughter, son. She was like 16, son was like 14. Her and her husband wasn't much interested in anything. And they'd have the missionaries over and she'd call them her sons, give us all numbers. I was 33. It was just missionaries to go over there and spend way too much time, just to kill time,
yeah,
to track so many hours. And I went over, and she really liked me and we got along, but it's like, okay, no, we're not doing this. We're gonna come, we're gonna teach, we're
yeah,
gonna do whatever. And with hindsight, I should have been nicer to her, but for
mm,
some reason she liked me. I know she wanted me to marry her daughter, who we did. I ended up baptizing. It wasn't like a baptism that counted for me because by then I was in some other area, but I got permission to come there and baptize her. So that was a really special family, especially her daughter. Uh, what was her name? Hilda. She married this really awesome church guy and did really great and stuff.
mm.
So that was
So
cool.
the mother ended up joining the church,
She never did. She never
but her
did.
daughter did.
I mean, her excuse was she was afraid of the water, but she just didn't want to commit to do it. But she was great. The missionaries, would feed us and have us over. And yeah.
Yeah,
But because it was that way and because her two kids, I don't know if the boy joined, but his name was John Axel, but Edna, that was her name, Edna. She joined. So that was cool.
that was the daughter's name, Edna.
Edna. Yeah.
Yeah,
She was 16 when I was there. I think when I baptized her, she was 17.
got it. Okay.
So the other two baptisms I was associated with, one was really kind of odd. It was like I was the AP and had a companion who was the AP. We were in the mission home. And, you know, generally APs, they don't go do proselyting. They just do supervisory stuff, but not the machine. So we went out and proselyted, got this referral from a member lady who was old to teach her husband, and he was very willing. And so we taught him and baptized him. And I think he just did as a favor because even before he went home, he was already inactive. So,
Oh, wow.
and so that was that one. And then one other one was uh, that I taught. That one was a really good experience too, and taught him. And he was had a testimony and everything else. And we delayed because I wanted to delay because his wife was kind of interested and
Hmm.
couldn't quite get to that point. I wanted to see them baptized together, you know. And I say I rather than we. That's the kind of senior I was. It's like, this
Yeah.
is what we're doing. If you're along for the ride, we're partners. You're not, you're just along for the ride.
Right.
Not a good example for what a missionary companionship should be. And then
But what,
he ended up getting baptized later without his wife, which was great. So
got it. Okay.
those are the four baptisms I was at least, you know, which again, I was incredibly blessed just to be affiliated with four because really awesome missionaries a lot of times wouldn't have any.
Yeah,
Some offs had two or three because they just happened to stumble into the perfect family. So
sure. So I want to come back to obedience. You said you couldn't have been more obedient. What do you think drove that? And maybe share any stories. I remember some. I thought
yeah,
about them
no,
as I
I'll
was a
tell the
missionary about
famous
obedience.
I'll tell the famous May 14th hat story. So the obedience was, people said that and it made sense to me. So I just completely bought into it. That just because none of the rules were ridiculous and none of them were that hard. So why not just try to be as exactingly obedient as you could? And I'll tell the hat story and then I'll tell one when I was a zone leader on a boat. And it was like, um, so the hat story is a lot of us were missionaries from California who'd never lived in the snow. And we had a rule. You had to wear a hat outside from, was it October or November? I think it was October 15th to May 15th. You had to wear a hat. It was a smart rule. We knew the reason because heat escapes out of your head. And if you're not from Utah in the snow, you're like me, you're too dumb to cover yourself up. One town I lived in, it rained 364 days. So we were always getting rained on and snowed on. And I had a normal hat. It was kind of a funky, soft thing with pull down ears. This thing was ugly because, you didn't want to look good as a missionary. So we had to wear this hat and you need to wear this hat because it was always getting rained on. So here's the situation. It's May 14th. One more day till hats are off. You're in a city where there's no zone leader, there's no district leader, the mission president's not there, and it's really warm. You don't need the hat, and you know why the rule is. Do you wear the hat? And to me, it's a no-brainer. Of course you wear the hat. Why? Because it's the rule. You
Right.
you wear the hat. So that to me
Yeah.
is always an example of 100% obedience. It doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
So one rule I did break, but I don't even know if I really broke it. It was like every day you were up at 6, no matter what. So when I became a zone leader, and again, that was part of my competitive thing to be a zone leader. There were 4 zones in the mission, 3 had cars. Mine didn't have a car, ours didn't have a car because we were on the North Sea. You couldn't drive from one town to the other. It would take you one day to get there,
Right.
an hour by boat. And the rough sea is like one of the roughest seas in the world. And I'd heard that. So it was like, okay, we're going from this town to that town. I don't want to get seasick. So I'm not going to eat because then I have nothing to throw up. And if you know anything about seasick, that is the worst thing to do. Not eat because you get the
Mm.
dreams. And I'm going to get up at 6 because that's what we do. So I get up at 6 and then the boat is rolling and like this and dry and really sick. And I was at zone leader, I think, for 4 months. So then on, I didn't get up at 6 because it was healthier to stay in bed and get up.
Mm.
I guess I didn't obey that rule because it made me violently ill. So maybe I
Yeah.
wasn't
One.
100% obedient, but the hat story is, I've, I I'm sorry, I've told that story so many times, but to me, it was just a symbol of it. It was just, because to me, there's three levels, not levels, there's three reasons for obedience. One is natural consequences. You don't smoke because it makes you healthier.
Yeah.
Another one is because there's a specific promise attached. You don't smoke because you're promised treasures of knowledge. There's a specific promise attached to the word of wisdom. Windows of heaven is attached to tithing. It's really not a natural consequence. I guess if you don't smoke and drink, maybe you can study a little better, but
Sure.
why would the windows of heaven open because you gave up 10% of your money? Because it's attached promise. But the third one is, and that's the half, because there's a blessing in obedience itself, even if there's no apparent reason and doesn't seem to fit the circumstances.
Yeah.
And that served me well. And it just makes life so easy. It's like, this is the rule. This is what we'll do it. I just
Yeah.
remember every time we moved, the country's too big to drive. In smaller missions, you moved, the zone leader, something drives you from here to there. From in Norway, you move by yourself, and the mission rules of being with your companion. And my companions were all really good at this too. That's 100%. The only time you were separated is when you're on the toilet. And then all of a sudden to move, and sometimes it take the whole day and be by yourself, was just so jarring. I just had to remember that I was commanded to do this. I was commanded to not be with my companion. Oh, yeah.
Right.
But again, it's like even following a rule of being with your companion. It's like, what about this? What about that? It's like, don't waste any time thinking about it. You are never, ever separated.
Right. Yeah. It was, in some ways, it sounds like it was easier or simplifying in some ways, just to say, I'm just going to
It's just
following all
simple.
the rules and not having to pick and choose. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and just to me, a mission is hard work, but the life is so simple. You don't have to choose between better and best. You don't have to choose between trying to be a good dad and keeping your calling and doing good at your job. It's just, you only have one thing to do.
Right.
It's a it's a it's a simple life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it
Okay.
was
So you told,
following the rules was just so simple. So,
right. You told the hat story. What are other memorable stories?
that's the only
What are
one that
top
seems
stories?
odd that way. Otherwise, it's just just doing the stuff, just tracting, working hard, going out. Say a lot of weeks. Maybe we teach somebody. We might track 60 hours in a week. 6 days.
Yeah.
We didn't have a designated P day. So I just never took any time off. So
Oh wow. So there was no specific rest time.
so our schedule was up at 6, out at 9. Norwegians don't really eat lunch. They eat a dinner between 3 and 5. And so we'd go from 9 to 3, come home at 3 to 5, cook ourselves a meal. That's when you take your clothes to the laundry and do stuff. And then home at 9 and then or 9:30 in bed by 10:30. So we just, not everybody, but the machine, we just did whatever we needed to do personally in that 2-hour break.
Yeah.
And it wasn't said that it needed to be that way, but that's just the way I did it.
Yeah.
Well,
What wasn't said? What wasn't?
We lived in one house where I was the branch president and we needed to clean it. So that one worked good because I would clean it on Saturday and then my companions would write letters and take a quote unquote tea. So I'd say, you don't
Uh,
clean, I'll clean because I cannot rest and I will not rest.
yeah.
That was one thing fun
What?
about moving. I could sit on the train for a couple hours and go, this is cool. I'm following the rules.
Yeah. Right. Didn't have to feel
I'm just
guilty
kicking
for taking
back.
risks.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about navigating the cold? Talk about what that was like, or any memorable stories with that.
So the cold was, I learned, well, first of all, I brought clothes with me to Norway, which is a joke. They all wore out in no time at all, so we had to buy clothes. So the big three things to keep warm is hands, feet, and ears. And and some missionaries, it was so cold their hands would crack and bleed. You had to be really careful with your pencil when we were tracting and making notes, not to touch your tongue, because it would immediately freeze. Like, what was that, Dumb and Dumber, where that happened?
Right.
That movie? Yeah. And it was just the biggest thing to keep warm was a monster breakfast.
Mm,
Again, we'd
mm.
eat in the morning and then we'd be out till 3. So fasting was really hard. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So we would have eggs and cheese and cooked cheese on it and potatoes and fish, and just because I learned that when you're outside and it's cold and you get it inside, it doesn't make a difference how many coats you have on when it gets inside.
Mm,
And we didn't have midnight sun because I was further south, but when you went outside and you saw blue sky, that was the worst
mm.
because the clouds kind of sucked it in. So I think the coldest it got where I saw a thermometer was 45 below.
Oh my word.
It's just unbelievably cold.
Mm.
And 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 the Norwegians sometimes laugh at us, because we'd not struggle with, yes, kind of struggle with the cold. It's like, yeah, you guys go to work, just get on a train and go
Right, right,
to an
right.
office. Or when you take vacation, you're in the ski stuff and you're just bundled to the hilt. We're
Yeah,
trying to look professional. So try
yeah.
tracking it for 10 hours a day. But again, it was just like, that was what we did, and that's the way it was. So you just got used to it. We would, a lot of times when we would come in at 3, we would come in the house and then go in a porch area and stand for 3 or 4 minutes, because sometimes it was too hard to go from the cold to a warm
Mm.
house. Yeah, I don't know if it was dangerous, but it was better just to kind of transition in.
Why and why? Just because it was jarring to go
It was
to,
just
to
kind of jarring. Yeah.
yeah. Hmm. Okay, so maybe summarizing any others, but maybe let's start first with any other major stories or major memories from your mission that we didn't hit on.
Just the one memory I said, the regret was kind of regret, not nicer to my companions, that we didn't do more service, which is unfortunate.
Hmm.
Because if I would have said to our mission president, go, we're tracking 60 hours a week, how about if we do service 10 hours? He'd have gone, what a brilliant idea. It was like nobody thought.
Right.
It wasn't like it wasn't allowed. And the other one was, which I've mentioned a couple of times, I would have been less competitive. I wanted to be the fastest guy to learn the language, the fastest to learn the scriptures, the fastest to learn the discussions. And I was happy that everybody knew that. I wanted to be a senior
Right.
companion right away. I wanted to be the district leader. I wanted to be a zone leader. I wanted to be an AP. It's like, okay, if I went back through that, I would be, probably not. I'd still be me. I'd still be that competitive. And again, I probably wouldn't have been any nicer to my companions. So I think I covered my notes.
Okay.
What questions didn't I answer from that list?
I think you got most of the things that we said we wanted to hit. Maybe my last question is
Oh, I think you said the 3 things I learned.
oh yeah, hey, go ahead and finish with that one.
So two of them are we've already mentioned the value of hard work, the value of keeping the rules, and probably the third one was just the whole thing of the gospel in the church. And it's just like President Nelson talks about getting on the covenant path and staying on the covenant path. I've been on it, I've been off it, but when you're on it and you buy in, it's just this awesome plan that just sweeps you up, you know?
Hmm.
And there's just this one decision to make. You're gonna stay on the path, you're gonna get there. It's just, it's not easy, but it's just easy to understand. So
Yeah.
that was an ongoing lesson for me, which I've learned many times over my life when I've got off or got distracted. It's like, when you get on, it's not easy in terms of work, but it's just easy in terms of regrets and
Sure.
sadness. And there's a quote I like that kind of relates to the addiction recovery program that I'm in, that is something I learned truly from my mission. You know, depression is living in the past. Anxiety is living in the future. Peace is living in the present and giving up the illusion of control.
Hmm.
And that's really the third lesson, just that there's a great plan in place and it'll just take you. It's like the stone of Daniel rolling down. I think of it as a wave. It's
Yeah.
just don't fight it. It's just there. It's just, yeah.
Hmm.
And
That's awesome.
I would think of that when I would bless each of you and give a blessing, and I'd say different things, you know, get married in the temple and whatever. But the main thought I had to express is just, it's just a program. Just follow it. Just do all those things.
Yeah.
Baptized. Get the priesthood when you're 12. Go on a mission. Get married in the temple. It's just
Right.
there. Just do it. Just don't fight it.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the scripture I like? Don't kick against the pricks.
Yeah.
So that's the third lesson. Were there other questions we
Awesome.
didn't cover?
No, I think we got it. And you started to do the bridge into the next topic, which is BYU, but
Good.
we can hit that. We can hit that on the next one.
Cool.
Okay. Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.